can get ready to start in just a minute here.
Yeah, you'll take the comment right now. Okay. Thank you.
Roxxanne is on her way. She's just a few minutes. So I'm just going to switch the order to make sure that we give her plenty of time to be prepared. Wonderful. Camera's all good? All right, perfect. Okay. Ready? Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's press conference. My name is Carolina Ortiz, and I'm the Associate Executive Director of COPAL, Communities Organizing Latino Power in Action. And I am beyond thrilled to be standing in front of y'all today because Minnesota will soon join New York and New Jersey in passing cumulative impact legislation. This sets guidelines for permitting polluting facilities in the 7-county metro area, Duluth and Rochester, putting Minnesota at the forefront of a nationwide movement. That fills me with a lot of excitement and, as you can see, emotion. And I cannot emphasize enough that this is a major step forward in addressing the role large facilities play in degrading air quality and health in environmental justice communities. Our frontline Latino workers and community members, along with other low-income and communities of color, have been bearing the health burden of concentrated pollution from highways, truck traffic, and other industries where we live, where we work, where we pray, in our communities. We are now in the result of many, many years of work, stemming from a smaller South Minneapolis area to what we see today. In 2017, the Northside-based grassroots organization, Community Members for Environmental Justice, CMEJ, worked closely with their state representative Fue Lee to draft and introduce the first statewide cumulative impacts bill to protect all communities overburdened by polluting industry and Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's permitting process. In 2019, COPAL and the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table began collaborating with mainstream environmental organizations to build the momentum for addressing cumulative impacts at a statewide level through the Frontline Communities Protection Coalition. Today, we are joined by an esteemed panel of community leaders who have played an instrumental role in championing the legislation and advocating for frontline communities directly affected by environmental burdens. Now, with no further ado, I would like to introduce Representative Fue Lee, who I previously mentioned has played a crucial role in making sure that we get to this point today. Representative Fue Lee.
Thank you, Carolina. Good afternoon, everyone. State Representative Fue Lee. I represent North Minneapolis, House District 339A. Like Carolina said, my community has been, for far too long, a community that's been impacted by pollution, by heavy industries on the riverfront. And, for us and the community members that I've been working with ever since I got into the legislature in 2017, we really want to make sure that we are providing oversight over some of these facilities that are really contributing to adverse health effect in our communities. And so today, right now on the House floor, we're debating the conference committee report for House File 2310 that includes the cumulative impact analysis for the NBCA, when they're looking at some of our heaviest and biggest air permits, that whether that's a new permit or a reissuance, that they have to look at whether a cumulative impact analysis is required. And if it is required, then the permit applicant will have to go through the process. And if there's, a risk that if the result shows that there's a risk to health and the environment, then the commissioner must deny it unless the commissioner worked with the community that will be impacted by the facility to enter into a community benefits agreement that centers community front and center on making sure that that is something that the community actually wants. And so just wanted to really say thank you to the advocates behind me today. This is a very long process, 6 years for me, and now we're finally getting it towards the end of the line where we are debating on the House floor. We'll send it over to the Senate, and then next step after that will be to the governor's office. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague, Senator Jen McEwen.
Thank you, Representative Lee, and thank you very much, Carolina. I'm State Senator Jen McEwen. I represent Duluth in the Minnesota State Senate and am the chair of the Senate Labor Committee as well. I came into this work around the cumulative impacts bill pretty late here, and I have been following it a little bit, but I entered in to try to make sure that we could get it across the finish line. And I just wanted to say a special thanks to Representative Fue Lee and also to my colleague, Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who is the lead author of this bill and has also been working on it. He is, of course, the president of the Minnesota State Senate and couldn't be here today to speak with you about that, but he has been carrying this load and working on this bill for some time. So my entry into the work on the cumulative impacts bill, I was excited to be able to dive into this in part because of the community that I represent in the Senate. Duluth, as many of you know, is a strong union town with a very proud tradition of strong labor and strong support for unions. And it is also a very environmentally minded town. People are very, very cued into environmental stewardship and wanting to have our air and our water and our environment be as clean as possible, and also knowing that those things aren't opposites, that actually they should go together. Both responsible development going forward for living wage, thriving wage jobs going into the future, but also doing that in a way that is responsible to the people where that development is placed, and to our environment, to our air, and to our water. So I was sort of uniquely placed as the chair of the Labor Committee, and being so passionate about clean water and clean air, to try to dive in to negotiate some of those last sticking points between what the trades were concerned about, which of course is jobs for their members, and whether those jobs would be negatively affected by instituting this cumulative impacts framework. And so we hashed it out. I'm not going to say that it was always easy, but Representative Fue Lee and also representative from the trades really did remarkable work in compromising where they could, holding firm where it was important to them to hold firm. And I think that we came up with a beautiful compromise that really honors the cumulative impacts intent and the core of what it means. And I hope and trust that it is going to be very effective as we move forward. So we'll be following the rulemaking. We're going to be working together in collaboration. But this truly is where it's at as we move into the future. I just really want to make sure that people have that sense of understanding that when working people and people who are also working on public health and environmental health are coming together to pursue our common interests and goals and pushing forward and saying to industry barons and to management, of course we can have these things. We do not have to sacrifice clean air or clean water for jobs. That's ridiculous. So let's come together and figure out how we can do that. I'm really hopeful that this is one of those instances where we were able to strike this beautiful, this, I'm not going to call it the middle, it's sort of the vanguard, the front of where we really should be. And so I'm really proud of the work, and I'm so thankful to all of the people who have pushed this forward, and very proud also that we have all of our larger metro areas included. I know that our environmental advocates and a lot of community leaders up in Duluth are excited about this. We're excited we have Rochester in, and then of course the metro as well. So really proud to be part of this work. And then is Sophia here? Should I, or maybe you know the order? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I am very happy to introduce and pass it over to Roxxanne O'Brien and Justice Jones from Community Members for Environmental Justice, who, as I stated previously, started the bill with Representative Fue Lee. So, Roxxanne, Justice, please.
Thanks, Carolina, and thanks everyone who's here today. My name is Roxxanne O'Brien. I am the co-founder of Community Members for Environmental Justice. We are a coalition of caring community members working together to fight for environmental justice in Minneapolis. Areas like North Minneapolis have borne the brunt of concentrated pollution disproportionately located in our neighborhoods. Community has known that these large number of industries have been allowed through state permits to pollute near our daycares, our parks, and our homes, driving the health disparities we face.
According to the MPCA's own site, inhaling high concentrations of particulate matter is associated with an increased risk of heart attacks, irregular heartbeat, acute and chronic bronchitis, asthma attacks, and other respiratory issues that can result in hospitalization and even premature death for people with pre-existing heart or lung conditions. And according to the EPA, once taken into the body, lead distributes throughout the body in the blood and is accumulated in the bones. Depending on the level of exposure, lead can adversely affect the nervous system, kidney function, immune system, reproductive and developmental systems, and the cardiovascular system. The lead effects most likely to be encountered in current populations are neurological effects in children.
Pollution concentrated in Black and brown neighborhoods is systemic racism. This bill is one piece, but an important piece of the puzzle to undo this historic harm. By ensuring new and renewal of permits of existing industry will be reviewed with the cumulative impacts lens, we are sending a clear signal. Our neighborhoods, our bodies will no longer be sacrifice zones. When we started this fight many years ago, we were standing on the shoulders of environmental justice leaders of the past who fought for accountability. We took the baton in this marathon and ran our part. We honor them today with this win. We thank all the community members who tirelessly showed up in 40 below weather at times over the years to testify and keep this bill alive. We thank our amazing Representative Fue Lee and his legislative staff and allies for showing up for the community and our health through all these years. While there is still much work to do, decades of community work and vision has prevailed, and today we celebrate. Thank you.
I know we have one other speaker beside me who is running late and may or may not be able to be here, so if they're able to make it, I'll help for them to speak as well, but I am otherwise the last speaker. My name is Sasha Lewis-Norelle. I work for Clean Water Action Minnesota as their environmental health and justice organizer. And I want to start by thanking, as others have done, the many leaders who have gotten this bill as far as it has and is on the precipice of getting across the finish line. Representative Fue Lee, Senator Champion, Senator McEwen, many other legislative champions as well as community members for environmental justice, the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table, COPAL, Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, and many other groups who have stood by tirelessly and worked tirelessly on this bill in order to get it as far as it has. This bill marks a fundamental shift in the way that we look at the regulatory process, in the way that will give so much more power to our overburdened communities. That is the fundamental goal of this bill, is to say that community members deserve a strong voice in what facilities are in their spaces. There have been so many decades of facilities being able to easily permit in areas that are low income or primarily BIPOC or just do not have the political power to say no. And this disparity, this lack of political power, this lack of regulatory power has led to numerous health, economic, environmental disparities that has drastically changed the quality of life, the life expectancy, many other factors that are essential to living a good life and having a strong community. We still have a lot of work to get done to address environmental racism. There is also environmental justice communities across the state, and while we are very happy that we were able to include places like the entire 7-county metro area, as well as Rochester and Duluth, and an option for the tribes to opt into this policy, I also want to address that there are overburdened communities across the state in rural Minnesota who deserve, an equal say in the regulatory process as well. And we want to continue this work to uplift those voices, uplift those communities, and say that community voices are what matter in these conversations. There's a lot of work to be done still, but this bill is still a strong foundation for addressing environmental justice and centering environmental justice within the regulatory process. With this bill passing, hopefully today or tomorrow, we'll have marked a very strong step forward in this entire process. And we are also strongly committed to continuing to work on this bill within the rulemaking process and working on other legislation as well in the future. I also want to thank the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for their collaboration in this effort. We've met with them numerous times over the last year and a half in order to create a bill that is feasible and also going to be impactful. And we also are going to hold them accountable within the rulemaking process to make sure that community voices are what is centered within this entire process moving forward. I believe that we still have a very strong opportunity with the rulemaking process to create an incredible law that will, not only center community voices, but also strengthen our communities in ways that go beyond anything that we've seen before. And so again, I want to thank all the leaders and all the community members and everyone who has worked so hard to get this bill to where it is. And I look forward to continuing collaboration moving forward. With that, I believe we'll be open for any questions.
Quick question is, where did you guys end up on the geographic definitions of environmental justice neighborhoods and the radius around them, which this will apply? Will this apply to the whole 7-county metro, Duluth, Rochester area, or just within certain distances of established by census data environmental justice communities?
Yeah, I can answer that. Absolutely. So, yeah, this bill is, the definition of environmental justice community is based off of census tracts using a number of different criteria. So if a census tract is 40% or more BIPOC, 35% or more low income, or 40% or more low English proficiency, then it'll be counted as an environmental justice area. And any facility that is within 1 mile of those census tracts can be included. We believe it's very important that facilities that are nearby an environmental justice community are included in this because there are a lot of facilities that may not be within the census tract itself, but are still very impactful on the community itself.
Absolutely, thank you. And then one more thing on that, can you explain briefly the process for tribal nations opting into this?
So we are loud and clear from a lot of our tribal nations that some of them do, like the concept that we have around cumulative impacts. Some still want to understand what's the process and how that's going to be impacting their communities. And so that's why we have in the bill right now that we require consultation from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency with our tribal government. And at that time, if the tribal government would like to apply cumulative impact analysis, they could provide a written response to the MPCA to work with MPCA. So still honoring our commitment to having that consultation with the tribal governments before if there's any decisions that will impact projects that will happen on their land.
Thank you.
I'll just add one little piece to that too, is the language that finally ended up in the bill. I think we were happy with it because we did work with the PCA and also tribal attorneys consulting with us. So the language does also really reflect that this is a government to government consultation. it honors tribal sovereignty, that the tribe as an independent nation is making its own decision about the extent to which it wants to participate in this process.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess I'll go one more time. Briefly, could you explain where we ended up with the review process for already existing permits and how regularly they might have this be applicable to them? Is that just when they're seeking any kind of change or expansion to their permit, or when that permit goes up for renewal, instead of being a very automated type of process?
Yeah, I can start, and if others would like to add, definitely go ahead. So this process will apply to new permits, permit expansions, and permit reissuances. The MPCA will enter into rulemaking to establish benchmarks to determine when a cumulative impacts analysis is required. And so that means that not every facility will be required to do this analysis. It's really trying to target the ones that are being most impactful on our communities. And so when those permits that meet any of those benchmarks are either being expanded or are being reissued, or if it's a new project within those communities or within 1 mile of those communities, then they would automatically have to do this analysis. The commissioner may still require an analysis for other permits if they determine that it is necessary, and community members can petition the commissioner to ask them to conduct an analysis for a project that they may have concerns around. But the benchmarks are really there to establish a way for us to target the largest polluters in and around our communities, and it's those permits when they're getting expanded or renewed that will have to do the analysis.
Excellent, thank you.
I just wanted to ask, does this touch permits under state air programs, Clean Air Act air programs? Which ones are we talking about?
Yeah, I can try to answer that.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We have gone through a number of different iterations of exactly what permits would be covered by this. I believe the final version covers major source air permits as defined by the Clean Air Act, as well as 2 categories of state air permits, I think categories 5 and 6. And so again, it's really focusing on the medium and large polluters that are actually having a real impact on the health and environment of our overburdened communities.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And before we close, I do want to quickly introduce Sophia Benroot, who is here with us today. She is the co-director of the Minnesota Environmental Justice Table. And Sophia, if you could come up with me, and I think it would be very powerful to hear from you because you've directly been working so much on the cumulative impacts.
Thanks. I had therapy. We are humans. So yeah, thank you. First of all, I just really wanted to start out by thanking all of my fellow comrades in all of this this struggle, which it has been in its own way. And just like a deep gratitude to legislators that made this bill possible, and special thanks to Fue Lee for this effort towards shutting down HERC as well. We really appreciate it, and y'all have really worked hard on building out a really co-creative process throughout all of this alongside community. So we are committed to ensuring the future generations and current ones have community-led safety, protections, and determination. Communities of color are not waste sites. Past and present harms must be acknowledged, mitigated, and reparations should be given from our perspective. This bill is just one stepping stone in a path towards building out protections that we think should have been there from the beginning. And this law, depending on how rulemaking goes, may also help shutting down the HERC incinerator trash burner that we have been working on for years, and community has been working on for decades, and other facilities that pollute overburdened communities. This community, the county should no longer be able to make excuses for HERC by claiming it pollutes below its permitted limits. This law should make those permit limits take into account the total air pollution that HERC contributes to. This bill is not perfect. The process of creating legislation is far from perfect. And we really believe that our work is going to be deeply embedded in rulemaking as well. This fight is not over. Organizing is not over. And we have so many more legislative sessions to come. And I really do think this is the start. So really excited and happy be here. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Sophia. Are there any final questions before we close out? Any final statements from any of the activists or legislators? All right, well, thank you again so much all for being here. We look forward to continuing to work on all of this.